Self-Love is the New Sexy, the podcast devoted to helping you overcome life's most painful and stubborn challenges so you can feel great, have more energy, and live stress-free every day. To reach your full potential, simply work with the powerful spiritual principles that are readily accessible to everyone. It's easier than you think, and on today's show, W. Mark Watts is going to show you how starting with self-love is the key to joyously and harmoniously making that happen.
Hey everybody, it's W. Mark Watts. I want to say hello, welcome, and thank you to everyone for hanging out with me for another episode of Self-Love is the New Sexy. And today's topic is something that's super powerful and that we'll talk about on multiple occasions. But today I just want to introduce it to you and ask you a very, very important question, which is, what is your story? What is your story? Now, oftentimes, if someone asks you that question, you may look back all the way back to childhood and want to rehash and give a summary of your life. But that's not what I'm after with that question. I'm after something much deeper and much more important with that question, because that question has been asked of me on several occasions in several different trainings by several different mentors, which lets me know that it is a super, super important question, especially when you're looking to be your greatest, live your best life, and serve on the highest level and do things in an excellent way as opposed to just an average way. It's a very important question. So I started to dig into that, of course, through the various trainings I've had over the years. And it's been very significant. And I've made such tremendous gains and progress as a result of the answers that I came up with. So that's why I ask you, what is your story? The reason why it's so important is this. Your story oftentimes drives the successes, drives the direction, drives your energy. It influences everything you do in life in many respects, because your story is the catalyst. It becomes the captain of your ship, and it becomes the linchpin that holds everything together in your life. And so everything rides or is affected by the story you're telling yourself. And so where does that story exist? It exists in your mind. It's simply thoughts that you continue to tell yourself about events or the way you've interpreted events in your life. So what do I mean by that? Let me give you some examples from my life. So one of the first examples when I was thinking about this message, one of the first examples that popped into my mind, or actually there were several, but one of the first ones was winning or becoming a champion in basketball. Because when you are a competitive person, especially in sports, the end goal should always be to win, to be the best, to win the championship or win the title or whatever it is, to be the number one team in your division, conference, state, in the nation, etc. And so I recognized within me that I had created a story where I would never win a title, a championship, a conference title, a state title. And I worked hard at sports. I spent a lot of time, a lot of great time. I definitely enjoyed every minute of the time that I spent playing sports. But I wanted to win. And I recognized that many times, and most times, I was not winning. My team did not win. And that really affected me. That really bothered me, because I took it so personally that I thought that we didn't win because of me, that I wasn't doing enough. So I would always work harder and think about it and really give every ounce that I had, because I felt like I was responsible for us becoming a champion. Now, that's not necessarily a bad thing. However, it can be overwhelming for one person to take that much responsibility on their shoulders. And I didn't do that. No one asked me to do that. But again, that's the story I created, right? So that's the story that I created, is that we won't win. We're not winning because of me. And when you do that, now you've put a lot of pressure on yourself, and you've raised the bar, and you've basically set yourself up for multiple failures, because in a team sport, no one guy or girl is responsible for that team winning or losing. Yes, there are players who have a disproportionate amount of responsibility on teams, but when you have a team, it's called a team for a reason. Everyone has to contribute. Everyone's responsible for winning, not the one kid. And so therefore, when I would not win that conference title, that state title, or whatever it was, then I felt extremely bad, because I felt like I let not only myself down, but I let the team down and everyone connected to the team. Now, how is that going to be a good thing for me, especially as a kid and even growing up and becoming a teenager? I still carried that same responsibility quietly. I never told anyone that that's the way I felt, but I did feel that way. So when we would lose, I would take it so personally and so hard. I would be so upset with myself and with the world, and it just was not right. But all of that came about as a result of the story I had created in my mind about my level of responsibility and what I should be able to deliver in that particular environment. Now, that is not a beneficial way to approach life on a daily basis. And so that's why once I recognized that, I uncovered it, I knew that I had to do something different. And because that was not working out, it was causing me so much pain and anguish that it almost became, I almost felt like there's no point in me playing. Like, what's the point? I'm going to lose, and then I'm going to feel horrible, and I'm going to blame myself. And then that's no good. So, brings me back to the question, what is your story?
We hope you're enjoying today's show. If so, please take a moment to show your support for the show by leaving us a 5-star rating and review on iTunes. If you have questions for W. Mark Watts, please feel free to contact him over at wmarkwatts.com, on Instagram at wmarkwatts, or on Facebook at Self-Love is the New Sexy.
And so that's all I want to broach with you today, is I want you to look back at your life. And that can be, we've told ourselves stories. We made up stories from childhood, and we still make up stories to this day. So you can choose whichever one you want to choose to start with. And the thing that worked the best for me is, and I tell everybody that I talk to and that I work with, is don't overthink it, but ask yourself that question. And the first thing that starts to come up in your mind, that's probably the one you want to start working on. So all you have to do is a very simple exercise. So today's episode is just one simple exercise for you I invite you to try. And it's just this. Take a moment to sit by yourself, or you can do it when you're driving in your car, because believe it or not, if you turn the music off in your car and you're alone, that's a perfect time to get answers. I know for me, I do that quite often. I've often done it for hours on end. Back in the day, I used to drive from Detroit, Michigan to Charlotte, North Carolina. And there were several times that I would ride without any music on, anything going on, and I would just deal with my thoughts. I would just get into my thoughts. And before you know it, I'd be 5 hours into the drive, and then I'd be 7 hours into the drive. And then I would say, you know what, I'm just going to go all the way without any music, because I want to continue to hear my thoughts so that I can start to understand what's going on in my mind so I can reshape them. So I say all that to say is don't underestimate when you're in your car, because a lot of people say, well, I don't have time. I don't have quiet time. Yes, you do. You have to find it. And you can oftentimes find it in your car. So turn that radio off. And when you're driving from your home to the store or your home to work or to the mall or wherever you go, that 5, 10, 15 minutes can be that great time for you to get connected more to yourself and your thoughts. So just simply ask yourself that question. You can do it out loud or you can do it silently, but ask yourself, what story am I telling myself that's truly affecting my life in a way that I would rather it not? What story am I telling myself that's affecting my life in a way that I'd rather it not, and that I'm ready to change and ready to shift? And then just get quiet and just listen and pay attention to the thoughts that pop up in your head. And as soon as they pop up in your head, you know, the one that's the loudest or the one that pops up the most or the one that pops up first, and it might be the only one that pops up, or the one that kind of pops up that looks like it's in bold print. You know, it could show up in many different ways for you. However you get that answer, take special note of it, write it down, because that's where we're going to start. And then that's what we're going to approach in the next podcast episode is, now that I understand what that story is, or I know what one of my stories are, because if you're like me, you've got numerous stories. So it's not a one-time thing. There's numerous stories that we tell ourselves that we have to work on and release. So come up with that story. So I invite you to do that. Jot it down, put it in your phone, wherever you remember it, have easy access to it. And then stay tuned. Come back for tomorrow's episode. We're going to talk about, now that we know what one of those stories is, how do we release it and how do we make it work for us? So that's all I have for you today, folks. Have an excellent, super wonderful day. Stay tuned. Come back and hang out with me again. And I look forward to speaking with you all again soon. Bye now.
You've been listening to Self-Love is the New Sexy with W. Mark Watts. If you enjoyed today's show, be sure to tell a friend. Also, make sure you never miss an episode by subscribing to our show on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher Radio, or wherever you listen to podcasts.